Happy birthday, NIL. NIL turns 1 year and cupcakes are in gear. No, it's dad joke. All right. Player Development Pod family. Thank y'all so much for checking in. This is a bonus episode because as stated in that corny joke, NIL is in its 1 year. This is the 1 year anniversary of NIL, and I'm excited to have Lauren Hawkins on with me. She is in the athlete brand development department with Flagship Arkansas. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Flagship?
So the flagship program at the University of Arkansas.
Flagship program. Yes. Mm-hmm. The flagship program at the University of Arkansas. You all forgive me if I slip up. Lauren has been correcting me since 2019. So it's just going to be a natural podcast there. So Lauren, I'm excited to have you on. I could spend 10 minutes talking about you and how great you are and how much you helped at, the University of Kansas. That's where we met. Lauren assisted me in creating great generational impact at the University of Kansas. You can hear more about this impact that Lauren had, not only on myself, but Kansas football in the episode titled The Biggest Thing I Learned in Player Development. So Lauren, thank you so much for being here. So excited that you would give time of your day to be with us. Can you introduce yourself?
Yeah, Ed Jones. Thanks for having me on finally. So like you were saying, I am currently at the University of Arkansas, working and living NIL day to day. Student athlete development background though. And I think something that I've really enjoyed so far is just seeing how those two things go hand in hand. Because I was passionate about student athlete development. Now I'm passionate about NIL. And so, yeah, that's me. KU grad, Rock Chalk.
Rock Chalk. There we go. So can you tell us a little bit more about the flagship program there at Arkansas?
Yep. So our flagship program here, it's kind of a play on words because we are the flagship state. Well, the flagship school in the state. So
yes.
I think about it thinking about KU, K-State, right? So those are always going to be like your in-state rivals. Where at Arkansas, it's just the Razorbacks. Like everywhere you go, there's a hog on the car. Wow. So that's where we got the name flagship. And so our department, there's 3 of us in the department. And what we do is work with student athletes every single day on branding themselves, teaching them about entrepreneur skills, and then even like taxes and finance. So it's all encompassing. And I think it really complements student athlete development. We work with our SA Dev department a lot too, but it's all NIL all day long.
Nice. All NIL all day long. Now we can't spend all day long on this podcast, but this one is dedicated to NIL all episode long. So the way we're going to kind of do this is, what we thought about NIL when we heard about it. And I remember, we were working together at Kansas and they were like, all this stuff was going out and they had me on these committees and I was sharing this information with you about what was going on. We were trying to create, we're on the board just writing what it could be, what it could look like. So I have some thoughts about what I thought it would be. We can kind of just bounce back about like before you got into it, before it hit, what did you think it could be, like the benefits and some of the things that, maybe benefits, some of the things, challenges, and even some of the things that you may have been worried about?
Yeah. So I think I saw a tweet the other day from another KU grad, actually, and she's working in NIL. Shout out Dayton. And she said basically that she wrote a paper about college student athletes and how they should be paid back in undergrad. And now she's literally working every single day to make sure that happens. So I think I've always been pro paying student athletes. There was never a moment where I was like, this isn't going to be a good thing. I think a lot of the times everything's a good thing, right? Until it's not, right? So you see people using it not in the way that it's intended. And that's why I love where I'm at with the flagship program because we are doing NIL how it's intended. But I would say that I definitely thought that it was going to maybe tear some locker rooms apart. That was one thing I think that I was worried about, just like how the star player and how the person on the bench is going to feel in the NIL era. And I think that stems from you because you take care of every single student athlete like they're the star player. So in my head, I'm like, okay, so how are we going to balance this out if there's people not making like as much money as the person next to them in the locker room? So I think that was what I had in the back of my mind the whole time at the start of this.
Yeah, I mean, that was a big deal too. I know we discussed that a little bit. I know that was what the coaches were worried about. Coaches were like, hey, is this going to split up the locker room and the culture? And I always saw it as, this may sound, but it is what it is. always like, it's like playing time to me. Like, I mean, at some point, like I wasn't a great athlete. I think I expressed this a lot on my, on this show. I knew when somebody was better than me, and it was like, hey, that dude's better than me. I know he's getting more clock. I get it. You know, always felt like guys would kind of do the same with NIL. Like, hey, I get it. He's got a presence. He's making plays. You know what I'm saying? He might be from H-Town. So, you know, it's just stuff like that stuff like that where you're like, okay, I get it. Some of the things I wrote down, I'm a note person. I'm trying my best not to be too notey, but,
you're also a physical paper person.
Yeah, that was a big deal. Like Lauren was always like, I was like, Lauren, I got to print it. Like I like paper. I like to write on it. And this transition in life, I've gotten a lot better at not using paper. So there's been a lot of trees saved, and I'm actually planting one in the back, I think. All right. So I think the biggest thing, I was on a couple calls, and like, I think the biggest thing for me that kind of what frustrated me, nobody was listening to what the rules were. And everybody was like, oh my goodness, they just gonna drop bags of money off on them and blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, that's not it. Like I was on this call and there was some old heads on there and I had to respect them, but they were like, man, they just gonna drop. I'm like, guys, they like, this can literally like, they got to do taxes. Like in the sense of it, if you really do it, you almost have to create a LLC or some type of business, something, right? You got to create some entity that takes your name, image, likeness, and you benefit from it. So that was one thing. But some of the things I thought could go well with it was just like, it could be beneficial for athletes. So like, instead of them just dropping the bag off, it's like, I think about that. If you teach a man how to fish, he'll know how to fish the rest of his life. But if you give him one fish, he'll only have fish sticks. And so, what for me is like, they could learn so much in this. Like they could learn, entrepreneurship, like what does it really mean? And I think entrepreneurship to people like, because I think there's an entrepreneur attitude you can even have as you work for somebody. A full-time job, you can have an entrepreneurial attitude. I believe that's what we shared at Kansas. Like we were like building this program out, like, no, we're going to do this. We're going to do that. This looks good. Right. So I think there's some business savvy. I think that teaches them, relationships, how to deal with people, whatever it may be. But, and I also thought, you could tell me if I'm right or wrong, going into this, I was like, man, companies really gonna make money during bowl games. I kind of thought NIL deals would replace the commercials, championship games, bowl games, whatever. But that's like what I kind of going into it. I was like, okay. Then I think the biggest thing that bothered me going into it was like, man, coaches being hypocritical. That's the best way I could say it. Is like, man, y'all really. There were coaches talking about, if these guys get paid, I'm not going to coach. Like, come on, coach. Like, your family has generational wealth because of these players. These players ain't going to make what you make. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, it was just incredible. Like, one coach was on, Twitter. I think he got destroyed. He's talking about, this one school had like a collective, I would say, for a position group where everybody got $50,000. And he was like, well, how can guys get that? And somebody's like, bro, you got $7 million to leave. Like they let you go and they gave you $7 million. Like, and so for me, it was just like weird for coaches. Cause it's like, man, you're not going to just sign a contract. We all talk about the love of the game, but you're not going to coach a team without making sure that you got bowl bonuses, academic bonuses, all this. So like, why can't the players get a little bit of that? And it wasn't all coaches, but it just kind of like, you started listening to people like, oh, okay, so that was one thing going into it that, I didn't know. But I thought it would be cool because I was with you. I was pro these guys getting paid because a lot of people don't realize on the outside in how many people came into our office and were like, man, I need even scholarship people. You can sit there and say, oh, they're getting a free education. All right. I mean, we can have that discussion for another day, but you got people like, man, coach, I'm hungry. Like I need gas. I need whatever. Because you got a situation. We had a young man and I highlighted him as the former player of the show. He was using his scholarship money to pay for his sister to go to school. Yeah. Shout out to Andrew Tovey. He wouldn't mind me saying that. I don't think he wouldn't. So, I mean, but people don't know that. They just think, oh, these guys. So if he, now he's in nursing school, he's doing things. If he could have got an extra $2,000, he would have taken it, and it's just, I think people get so caught up in where they are and everybody thinks of in a middle class to high class mindset. And that's why I enjoy this position. Because you get to break that down. But it's like, for me, I was like, yeah, absolutely. And it don't even matter. I don't care if you filthy, stinking rich. If you got an opportunity to make more money, isn't this what this capitalist country, like, so that's another thing. But anyway, I'll kind of get off my high horse. Do you have any reactions to that?
Yeah, you kind of hit on something when you said that sometimes it's like not even money. Like sometimes they need food. I think we stress that a lot in our office. Like, okay, what is it that you use day to day? And how can that be an NIL deal, right? So We have someone that's working with like a HelloFresh type of service. They use it all the time. Why are you spending that much money on HelloFresh when you can use your NIL and now you're getting HelloFresh for free? So I think it's not always money. I always like to think smarter, not harder. Like I don't want to pay for Orange Theory, you know? So like, how could I use my NIL to get that for free membership to Orange Theory, free food, free, whatever it is. I think a really good example, a fun example is one of our student athletes at a pizza restaurant here in town. He was going in like every single day. And they noticed him and they're like, you know what, like, let's do something together. Let's collab. He might not get money from it, but you got to get that pizza, and that's $8 that you're saving every day. And
saving money. Yes. So, saving money is making money.
Come on, Ed Jones.
Come on. And it's interesting you say that, because like we had an offensive lineman who came up to me at my last institution, and he was like, look, I really don't want money, but I like grilling and I want to get into grilling. I just need somebody. I want cast iron skillets and I just want grilling material. I said, well, then send that to them. Like that's easier for them because they could just send it to you. And then you're, he was
like, send me some steaks.
Right. And he was a big time player, all conference, offensive lineman of the year. And he was asking about that. And I was like, dude, that's perfect. So to piggyback what you're saying, a lot of people just think money, money, money. But like, I know for me, I don't know what I would have wanted in college, maybe some boba tea, but like it's your likeness for your benefit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I would have liked, something to help me get through Spanish class in undergrad. I don't know what that would have been.
Chick-fil-A, 8-piece.
Yeah. Number 3 count.
For y'all that don't know, like not to toot my own horn, but I won 3rd place in the bilingual spelling bee in 3rd grade. Yeah, I was pretty good at Spanish, and Lauren got destroyed by Spanish at the University of Kansas. All right, so now that we've been in it, or it's happened, what have you learned? What do you learn specifically in your role? If you could talk about that.
So going back to it tearing the locker room apart, that is like the polar opposite of what we've seen. So I spend a lot of time working with football, and they'll come in the office and they're like, I really don't want to do this deal, or like, I don't have enough time for this deal, but I want my teammate to get it. So like, how can I put him on? And every time that happens, like Ed Jones knows I'm dramatic. Like I get the warm and fuzzies every time. I'm like, yes, like this, yes. And so I think that is just kind of going back to that. I think that was something that was really big for me to see. And I think it's amazing to me how NIL and student athlete development, I'm always going back to this, but how they go hand in hand. Because when you think about NIL, it's setting you up for success later on. So like these companies that you're working with, when you're done, your playing career's over, they might give you an internship or they might give you a job depending on how well you handled yourself during your NIL agreement. So I think that is probably the coolest thing to me, is just watching how the two things I'm super passionate about go hand in hand. And it's just fun watching these kids make money.
Yeah, there's no doubt. They got to get that guap.
Yeah,
I think that's something I learned too. Like, and it was interesting. Something I learned was like different deals. We had one guy who had financial education, so he had a certificate, and he was able to then get money to help other people get it. So I was like, that's pretty cool. Like he's learning financial literacy or financial education and teaching others, and he's getting paid to do it. Once again, I could agree with you. It wasn't a big locker room deal for us. Now, where I was at, it wasn't as encouraged, which I wasn't a big fan of personally, but I just kind of thought like, how are we going to keep this away from athletes when they got social media? Like, I mean, I think everybody had that typical, it was a June.
It's June 1st. I'm an NCAA athlete. Yeah.
You know exactly what I'm talking about.
My DMs are open. Yeah.
My DMs are, yes. Everybody had that. So we're sitting in the meeting, and we're kind of like, hey, let's try and keep it like on the down, like DL. And I'm kind of
their DMs are open.
I'm like, do you realize? And I'm looking, all I do, me, I got the list. I'm looking at our team while this is, after the meeting, like, hey, we got 47 guys that are like, my DMs are open. So we have no chance of keeping this quiet. So, but once again, that's one thing I learned. It kind of went back to the coaching deals. Like you can't, like, I thought that was weird. Like, I think people thought it would take away from the success that you could have on the field. And what we learned is it didn't. We were able to win the conference. You go from winning 2 games to winning a conference while people are taking care of themselves. And it's like, what I tell people all the time is like, and this is even greater than NIL. This goes to player development, student athlete development, because coach is like, well, hey, we need so-and-so's time. His brain can hold and handle more than just football, right? More than just a couple things. Like they can get things done. Another thing I learned, some of the big deals that were given out early, some of those players didn't perform to, what the expectation would be the best word of the deal. Mm-hmm. Now that could be injuries, to other positions, that could be coaching changes, that could be a lot. Like there's a lot that goes into that. But I also noticed that
I feel like,
yeah, you're good.
I feel like when you think about just like people performing or like those early NIL deals, I don't think people were really careful all the time, right? So you just wanted to be the first one to have a deal, or you wanted to say you had this deal. And I think because NIL is the adult world, you got to be intentional, right? So I'm sitting here like, okay, so let's like look through these contracts. Let's look through this deal. And, I'm not in the business of saying yes or no to any deal. We're just kind of like the compliance department, I guess. But I'm looking through some of these things. And I'm like, you've got to be intentional. Like, don't just do it because you want to be the first, or don't just do it because you want to say you have this. Like, how does your brand align to this? And I am really big on that. Every time they come in the office, I'm like, okay, that's cool that you want to work with this brand, but is that your brand?
Right.
And so we talk about that all the time. I don't know if that's like my journalism background that always comes out during that, but that's huge for me. Like how does this fit you? Because you don't just have to be a fit for a company; they have to be a fit for you.
So that brings up a point. So those two, you brought up 2 points I think about. Like, we're literally sitting there, and I'm talking to our compliance department. I was the liaison, for lack of a better word. And I'm looking at these contracts, and some of these contracts are like, hey, if you get drafted, your contract re-ups for 5 years. And it's like, bro, hold on, they gonna keep you at this money while you get drafted? Or like one said, we get to use your likeness for your entire life, the entirety of the company. Like past your life. We're like, hey, y'all, like, cause once again, like you're saying, like, oh, let me get a deal. Let me get a quick 100, or let me get a quick 200. Some of these people was $5. I'm like, come on, bro. Like $5. But I mean, that's for another day.
It's $5. It's a Starbucks drink.
It's right.
An extra small Starbucks drink.
Let me sign my entire life, because it reminds me, and I don't know if they did this when you were in college, but when I was in college, I had to remind people that, once again, like you said, I love the word you use, adult. Like, they're still businesses. Like, they ain't here to treat you like a student athlete. These ain't your coaches, or like, oh, we helped you get in. You're a 17-year-old, 18-year-old young man trying to figure it out, or young woman trying to figure it out. It's business. And so they're going to they're trying to make profit. So they're like, you learn about business people, which is pretty bad. But it reminds me of when I was in school, we used to, for a free t-shirt and a slice of pizza, they had these like clipboards where you had to give like so much information away. And like you coming out of, high school, you're like, oh man, I want a free t-shirt. Mm-hmm. But you literally gave this, maybe it's a credit card company or whatever, all your information for a t-shirt. So it kind of reminds me, like, you got to remind yourself, like, they are like, it ain't all, butterflies and like what you may think the athletic department, everybody cares. Everybody doesn't care. Like, this is business. Like, you got to make me profit, and I'm gonna do whatever I need to do to continue the profit that you make from me. I
think, like, you think about it and you're like, okay, so you're looking at this and like you're saying, if I'm giving you my likeness for the rest of my life, no, because yesterday's price, today's price, and tomorrow's price are all different. Yes. So what you get me for today, I'm moving up. Right.
Yes. Yesterday's price is
yeah, you're going to pay me today's price.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And we're going to be thinking about tomorrow's price in the process.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You brought up another thing, specifically talking about brand, because a student athlete tweeted this out, and I was like, whoo. He was like, he played basketball. He was like, man, a lot of y'all talking about y'all brands, but y'all really billboards out here. I was like, and
I'm going to use it too. Let me write that down.
I mean, I got to find it. I think I bookmarked. I got to find it. I'll find it and send it to you. But I was like, wow, he's right. Because everybody, this might not go with me, but since they're giving me money, hey, go with this. And if you could talk to, people listening about the importance of brand, how do y'all keep them on the, like, this is a brand, you're not a billboard? Because it's easy for me to say, like, I always think of like Jerry Rice, right? And I hate that this happened to Jerry Rice, Hall of Fame receiver, one of the best receivers ever. But I always think about that Popeyes deal. He had the helmet and the drumstick was rolling. I'm like, come on, dog. Like like, you know, I think about that when I think billboard and brand. Like, you're the greatest, you're the GOAT. You shouldn't be doing stuff like this. So how do y'all keep people on their brand?
Mm-hmm. I think the number one thing is when our student athletes come in and they're like, you know, my brand is my sport. And I always like piggyback the football because I just work with them a lot. But, you know, I'm a football player. Like, that's my brand. No, that's a part of who you are, but it's not who you are. So it's always figuring out, what are you passionate about outside of football? So we have an exercise and we always sit down, we do their core values. We start with that. Mm-hmm. And then if I was to open your Instagram right now and I didn't know you, what are the 3 things I'm going to get about you? And so we'll go and we'll look at their Instagram and I'll write my 3 things down that I would get from them. And sometimes it's not great. And so that's how we start the brand building, right? So like if a stranger was to look at it, what do you want them to see? And so I think it's really important that your brand aligns with the companies that you're working with, and just in general, right? I think in Arkansas, we have a huge fan base. Like I said, there's hogs on every car, except for mine. There's a Jayhawk on it still. But these, like, when you go out in the community, people know who you are. So your brand is not just who you are on social media.
Right.
Your brand, I think we've talked about this before. It's literally what people are saying about you before you're even in the room.
Correct.
And so you just gotta think about it. You gotta build it, and it has to align with your core values. Number one.
See, core values. I mean, that's something I talk to people about a lot. Like, people will be like, how do I start something? You got to start with who you are. You can't fake it. You know this. Like, we talk about this a lot. You can only fake for so long. You can only fake for so long. Like, my daddy used to say, you can't remember every lie you made, you know? And so I appreciate you saying that about the brand and, like, you know, all that. So you attended the NIL Summit. If you can kind of talk to us about how that was, you know, what you all talked about, and if you could talk about what do you feel is next in NIL?
Yeah. So the NIL Summit was literally like the future of NIL. So there was an award ceremony, right? First day we walk in, award ceremony, and there are student athletes from like all over the country sitting there. Mm-hmm. And they're like excited to be there, and they're excited to be talking about their NIL opportunities and just things that they've seen. And I think one thing that I noticed at the NIL Summit was just like the energy in the room, right? Because NIL is such a new thing. But there's so many different avenues, and I think it allows student athletes to be so creative. A lot of the time, student athletes, you know, you get your playbook and it's made by someone else. And so you're sitting there and you're like, okay, like, I have to do this that was made by someone else all day long. With NIL, you make your own playbook. And I think that is why they were so excited at the NIL Summit. And I shout out to everyone that was in attendance. So I think it was really cool. It was a good opportunity. There was really cool sessions. I know there was one in particular that was geared towards like agents and how student athletes should pick an agent and like the questions they should be asking. And I think it was just like really good information. It wasn't surface level, like this is NIL and this is the 6 rules that NCAA gave. Like, no, let's dig a little deeper. Like, how do I vet an agent? How do I make an LLC? Like, there was just like some really, really good things in there. And it was also really fun to watch them walk around. Like, some of them had their own merch on, and I was like, this is like a whole new world. It was fun.
I like what you said about like the creativity of it all, like just the whole new world aspect of like, wow, they get to be themselves. You know, I think a lot of people who hate on NIL, because I mean, they're just like anything, there's good and there's bad. I mean, there's always areas. Well, I would say areas. The biggest room in the house is room for improvement. There's areas to improve. But I think it's people who just don't, in general, when I look at the people who kind of hate on it or all these players or whatever, it's like you just lack creativity. Like you just like the assembly line life. Just do as I did what my people did. And it's just interesting to me when people kind of come on that dynamic, because one of the things that's starting to happen is like these states are passing for high school players. So now like you have to have conversations with high school players like about it. And I remember once again, you know, I was at an institution where we got a recruiting visit. We're not talking about it. And this kid went to university that's in a major city with like huge multimedia implications and opportunities and resources. And he comes, he's like, hey, are we going to talk about NIL? And we're kind of like, like they're coming out. Like, this isn't, you can't hide it under a rock, you know? And so I just think like even seeing where it's growing in high school where, you know, people are starting like they may not, I don't know all the state rules. I know I believe I'm in Texas. I believe you can, I don't know that off the top of my head, but even athletes are getting ready, prepared for when they get to college. And I like it in a sense of that because like when you talk about agents, I love that because if you're okay, let's say you're a person who has professional aspirations in any sport that you play, you're already learning about agents at that point. It goes back to kind of what we talked about earlier. Like there's such a learning process with that, you know? So that's what I like. We also find out what's next in all this NIL in your conference when a couple coaches kind of got after. We'll keep names off of it, but it kind of got a little heated, you know? So I'm interested in these turf wars that, for lack of a better word, that may happen. So as NIL, you know, it turns one, it's not going anywhere. You know, what message do you have for those who feel a certain type of way that are kind of on the spectrum of like, I don't like it. I still don't like it. It is what it is. These guys get enough or these girls get enough or, you know, they're going to school, whatever it may be. Those, for lack of a better word, the haters. What do you have for that?
I think so. Something that's always really funny to me is when we are out and about and people are like, oh, y'all work in the NIL department. And I'm like, the what? And they're like, you know, like, the NIL. I'm like, NIL, like, or like, they're like, NLI. I'm like, their national letter? No.
Yeah.
But I would say if you had the same opportunity, you would 110% go after that opportunity. And the thing with name, image, and likeness is it's not new. It's not like a grand concept. Everyone has an NIL. I can go out and get NIL deals.
Correct.
Ed Jones, you can go out. BTF, be on the field. Can have an NIL deal. Read by Ed could have an NIL deal, right? So I think that what people think is that it only pertains to athletes, and that's not true. So everyone that has an issue with it, I'm like, go out and become an ambassador for something. You go get your own NIL deal because you can. Everyone can.
Yeah. Yes. Who's stopping you?
Who's stopping? Not me.
Yeah.
Not the NCAA.
Yeah, definitely not me either. I don't have time, and I don't think my defense is that good. Go get it. Like I think that too, because you're starting to see like NFL. Like I'm on a couple NFL committees, and they're talking about NIL when people go to the NFL. Now at the NFL, we've always seen it as like ads, right? Because you're a professional. Like you know, I partner with. Okay, it's the same. You know, I think about Pat Mahomes, right?
And Affleck. Oh.
Correct. Yeah, that's a good one. Nick Saban and Deion Sanders and Affleck. I don't know, you know, after that kind of fall, hopefully they still make commercials, but you know, they're going out and they're getting representation. They're getting paid, you know, or think about Pat Mahomes. He's got like all of that. And so
Furniture Mart, Whataburger, like he's everywhere.
Correct. And I think, yes. And I think it helps too, because like there are, you know, once again, it goes back to this is a learning opportunity. You know, now athletes can go there and they have a background knowledge because of people like yourself, and the things you all are doing at Arkansas, where they can go into these meetings like, oh yeah, this is okay. It's a little different. Money's probably gonna be a little bit different at that level, but they have an understanding of, like you said, who to trust, how to communicate this, and what's being asked of them. You know, so. Yeah, I'm with you.
If I had thought like that, I'd get bad.
I'm telling you, like I used to like, I was like, look, when NIL came out, I legit wanted to send a tweet, but I knew it would be frowned upon. But I wanted to send a tweet.
We're gonna share it now anyway.
Yeah. I wanted to send a tweet, like, because we had to wear suits. I was like, if there's anybody that needs sunshades, you know what I'm saying? You got cufflinks, watches, socks, I'm down. Like, I'll get off the bus and I'll ensure that the guy taking the photo takes a picture of me and you got it. You know what I'm saying? Hey, headed to the Big 12 championship. With the watch right here. I can get some more lotion on. But yeah. But no, I want to end this episode here. Thank you so much, Lauren, for taking time and just talking about NIL, and this happy birthday once again to NIL. And taking time to talk about NIL, you know, what we've learned, what we thought, what we learned, and what's next. So before you leave, I want to do a rapid fire deal for you. I may know some of these answers to this, but we'll see. We want the audience to know you more.
Okay.
What you reading right now?
I'm currently reading a book called this is embarrassing. It is called The Entanglement. So that's that's fun. Anyway.
That's hey, no judgment. No judgment. Really, what's a daily discipline you're working on?
I would say my entire morning routine, right? If I
Okay.
don't start my day correctly, the rest of the day is not going to follow. So I want to be able to get up, drink my coffee, read my devotional, and then go on about my day. So waking up earlier and being disciplined in the morning.
Gotcha. Now, you know me, I always want to know the spots to eat at in different places. So if somebody gave you $25 to go somewhere in Fayetteville, where are you going for lunch? $25 for lunch in Fayetteville.
Okay. I would like split it up, right? So we're going to go to
Can you even answer this because y'all are working deals with, if you can't answer this because y'all may have deals with restaurants and I don't want to.
I can answer it because it's not my NIL. That's
Gotcha.
their NIL.
Gotcha.
I'm going to eat. I think it depends. There's this place called Mangoes. Really like it. It's like a Mexican restaurant. And I always go. I get kids meal quesadilla. And that's going to come to about $10 because inflation. And then we're going to get in the car and we're going to drive across the street and we are going to go get a milkshake from Shakes. And then we're going to come back to work.
Nice. Okay. What if somebody gave you $125 for dinner?
Ooh. Bordino's. We're going to Bordino's. It's like they have great martinis, good steak. We're going to Bordino's.
Nice. Okay. If you could join a band or a music group, past or present, who would it be?
Destiny's Child.
Oh, come on now. Can you pay my? Come on, H-Town.
Can you pay my bills? Come on, NIL.
Can you pay my bills? Hey, there we go. NIL. Can you pay my bill? Can you pay my telephone bills? I wonder if anybody has a telephone bill. Yeah. That should be that's the NIL song. Summit. That's what they should. All the players walked in. They should.
I'm about to put that on my somewhere. In
I like that.
Athlete brand development.
Literally, what we're talking about. Can you pay my bills? Yes. If you could co-star with an actor in a movie, action or comedy, who would it be?
Sandra Bullock.
Okay. And would that be your comedy or action or both? Because she's flexible. She's done both.
It would be comedy.
Okay. Well, who would action?
Because I feel like I'm funny.
Yes, I would agree. Who would the action be? The suspense. It would be for you. It'd be suspense. Who would it be?
I don't know. That's a hard question.
Okay.
I don't even. You've lost me with the question. I'm
gonna keep.
gone.
I'll stick with Sandra Bullock because she's done both. Sandra Bullock has done both, so she's versatile. She's done both. All right. Next question. What sport do you wish you played growing up?
Okay, I always say gymnastics. I like. They are first of all in shape, and the things that they do are literally amazing. I'm 5'6". I'm too big to be a gymnast, but gymnastics.
Got you.
Football.
And then
D-line. We know that.
D-line. Yeah, yes. Trill Squad.
Shout out Trill Squad.
How could our followers follow you? Where do they, how can our followers support you?
They can find me on Instagram and Twitter at Lauren Sydney _ SIDNEY.
Nice. Shout out to Linda Ellis Sims at KU. One time I tagged you on post and she came in my DMs like, yeah, that's not her handle. I was like, I appreciate it. Some Lauren in Maine got all these.
You thought I was like trying to balance out my ratio by not responding, and I didn't even get the tweet the whole time. I didn't even know you tweeted about me.
We could do a whole episode on balancing ratios. But Lauren, appreciate you so much coming on the show. Means a lot. So proud of you. I can spend the next 5 minutes talking about how proud I am of you. But keep doing it there. Keep crushing it. And that's it. Back to what Destiny Child says. Hey, can you pay the athlete's bills? That's it. All right.
And
I'll
I
see
can't. University can't.
Okay, can't do it. Illegal.
But Arkansas companies can. Hit us up.
Yes, that is true. We'll see y'all.